Hey, everybody. Kevin here with Pursuing Pixels, and welcome back to another edition of Save It for the Cast. And you know the drill by now. And in just a few minutes here, I'm going to be kicking the ball over to John, Randall, and I for a little chit-chat. Actually, for this conversation, we kind of dig into a little more of that Fire Tower board game, or I shouldn't say dig into it so much, kind of filling Randall in because he wasn't there when John and I talked about it on the episode proper. So just kind of filling him in on how awesome that game was. And then we kind of veer off from that into a little like board game and card game talk, a little like gin rummy, even a little Magic the Gathering, just kind of grazing on all this stuff. And then getting into also just like some of those games that end up like in bigger video games, you know, like poker and Red Dead Redemption and stuff like that. And even like the little card games that are in like stuff like King Knight on the Shovel Knight series, stuff, all sorts of various stuff, a little bit of Ultra Kill at the very end, just kind of a little stinger at the end there. But yeah, nonetheless, you know the drill as well. I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that I've been playing. I've been super busy lately between work, just getting home completely drained. And then, yeah, with the little bit of gaming time that I've had, I've also just been super busy outside of work as well, like with family stuff and all fun stuff. I've been really enjoying myself. But yeah, I get home and I'm like, man, I don't have the energy to really fire up anything. But I've been, per usual, kind of perusing the Nintendo Switch eShop and picking up some random games on sale here and there. Some games that have been on my wish list for a while, and actually some that just recently kind of added, and actually one that wasn't on sale. That's just a brand new release, at least on Switch. It's been a game that's been on my radar for a while. But I'll just start with kind of the most the oldest game that I grabbed, or the one that I grabbed first out of this batch here. I picked up Goliath Depot, and this one's from Flynn's Arcade Publishing. I actually forget the developer off the top of my head, but Flynn's Arcade just keeps putting out awesome games on the Switch left and right. They just did Saturn DX. Like, they're bringing some ports of some games that have been on my radar for quite a while. Goliath Depot, on the other hand, wouldn't have been on my radar if it didn't pop up on the Nintendo Switch eShop. And then again, I saw that it was published by them, and I was like, hey, these guys have been on a pretty good roll lately, putting out some really solid kind of modern retro arcade games, neo retro arcade games where they like really feel like those old school, Donkey Kong, Popeye, those kind of NES era, that they ported a lot of those games to the NES and whatnot. But on the other hand, they feel like so much smoother. Like we've talked about Donut Dodo in the past, speaking of another game published by Flynn's Arcade. But yeah, Goliath Depot feels very similar to that in the sense that it's like very much like a single screen, screen wrapping kind of, not precision platformer, but just arcade platformer, and you're just trying to close all the doors on any given stage. The way that this game kind of varies a little bit from some of those other arcade games is that it's just kind of like there's a ton of levels, like you're actually playing through like a whole world that each, the first world has 10 stages. Seems like I think there's 4 worlds because I recall reading at some point that there were 40 stages in this game. So yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a ton of fun. You don't really have an attack other than when you go up and close these doors with just like the one button in the game, or I guess the 2 buttons, because you can also jump. I think, at least. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It's been a minute since I fired this one up, and I've, again, only played a tiny bit. But basically, you're just like running around and dodging enemies, and then when you close and slam these doors shut, not only is that like your primary goal to get all the doors closed on a stage, but when you close the door, there's like kind of like a sound wave or something that travels from slamming the door, I suppose, in both directions, to the left and right. It doesn't screen wrap, but just till it gets to the end of the screen, I think. I don't think it has like a range on it. And then if not, it has a pretty long range, because I've noticed, I'm like, man, I hit that enemy? Okay, nice. But yeah, it'll kind of stun them, and then you can go kind of just like, I can't remember if you have to press a button or if you just run into them kind of, Pac-Man style and just kind of eat them or kick them off the screen or whatever happens there. But yeah, just a really fun, solid, fast-paced arcade platformer that doesn't get quite as repetitive because it's always like a new level every time. Obviously, you can replay them and try to up your, speed run times and stuff like that. But just, I'm really enjoying myself with that one so far. And then another game, and actually another couple games from Vertex Pop. I'm just going to kind of touch on these briefly. I think I might have even talked about We Are Doomed in the past, but it's like a top-down arcade twin-stick shooter, and it was included in a couple of those, or at least one at the very least, if not multiple of those Itch.io charity bundles. But it's just like a top-down, really slick twin-stick arcade arena shooter with just some really, again, all the games from Vertex Pop. I've also recently talked about Super Crush KO from them as well. But yeah, with We Are Doomed, it's just this really just slick, kind of like, I don't know, the colors are like kind of yellow, purple, green, not quite neon, but like, I don't know how to even describe the style because it's not pixel art or anything. It's just this really clean aesthetic, especially like the menus. Like as soon as I fired this one up on Switch, because I'd only played a little bit of this one on PC, again, just combing through those itch.io charity games, it's like, okay, I fired this one up, but there's also 10 or 20 or, hundreds of other ones that have caught my eye. So I really was just kind of firing up for a brief minute, and really enjoyed it, but just never really have sunk my teeth into it. So when I saw it go on sale for like $250 on Switch, I was like, okay, well, I'll definitely play it more there. And then I also picked up their most recent game called Hyper Meteor, and this one really kind of got the hooks in me again. I only played for a tiny bit here, but it's another like kind of single screen arcade game, arena shooter kind of, except you can't shoot. You're just kind of like this little triangle ship. The game really has like a retro, almost reminds me a little bit of like a Nintendo DS era, just something about the resolution of the pixels and stuff like that. And even like the frame rate of the movement or animations. I don't know how exactly to describe it, but it just really reminds me of a DS game. But basically you just like, you're always moving very slowly, and then you can kind of like just steer your ship, top down twin stick style just by pointing the analog stick. And then you also have like an accelerate button that you can, either tap and feather to move and finesse your movements, or you can hold it down and, just keep jet boosting. And I think you even kind of slowly speed up over time the longer that you hold that down. And then basically there's these meteors that are just floating around and rotating on the screen. And this is all in like 2D space. And then you basically, most of the meteors, when they're larger at least, will be like half of them are shielded with like a darker color, and then the other half is like a lighter color. And then if you smash into that, it'll split the meteor in half. And then eventually when they get small enough, you're splitting it into a small enough chunk that now it's just like a totally small, completely breakable rock, and then you can, just bash through those, and then they blow up or disappear or whatever. But this game is just so addicting. It has a 2-player mode that unfortunately I haven't been able to try just yet, but you just keep unlocking new like color palettes. It's got a really great kind of like 3-tone, I think, color palette system or whatever you want to call it. And you're also unlocking new modes. Like I unlocked this, I think it was called Meteor mode, outside of the normal mode, which like it seemed like some of the meteors, as you broke them up into smaller pieces, would then turn into like a bomb, and then or a mine or something like that. So they'd be like have like a little like flashing dot in the middle, and then when you would run into those, it'd be like a big explosion. And it's all about like keeping your combo going. At one point, I got pretty close to 100 combo. Again, just every time you bash through something, it kind of resets your timer on this, little combo meter, and gives you, a little more time to hit the next one. But it's just such an addicting game. I can't even imagine how much more addicting it is playing 2 players. I don't know if it's competitive or, cooperative, or maybe a little bit of both, where you're like playing for a high score together, but also competing. I really don't know. But then another game too that I snagged, that I just want to give a quick shout out to. I just played through like the first series of, stages or levels in the first, they call it a stage, but it's kind of like a world. But this game called VIVIDLOPE, all one word. And the reason I kind of scooped this up, other than the fact that it's just been on my radar for a long time, and I didn't know that it was coming to Switch, or if I did, I kind of forgot about it. But I saw that it was published by the developer themselves. So I was like, okay, that's only $10. I'm definitely going to scoop this up and throw a little chunk of change their way, because it's been on my radar for a really long time. This game has like a massive like Dreamcast, maybe even like a little bit of a PS1 era style, but to me it really feels like a Sega game, just in like the character design and I don't know, it reminds me a little bit of like Choo Choo Rocket with like Sonic. Even the gameplay is a little bit Choo Choo Rocket. It's kind of like a top down, but in like a 3D, it's like these weird like diorama. Sometimes the perspective gets like a little bit disorienting, but basically you're just like running around in this top down perspective essentially, although again the camera kind of rotates depending on what you're doing, and you're just like running around and trying to cover as many tiles. It's kind of like a grid based game, if you will, although the movement feels really fluid, but you're just basically running and trying to cover or paint all the tiles, kind of similar to Pigments from Punk Cake, or very similar to that. But the stages are definitely more like dynamic, if you will, not to diminish the the gameplay in Pigments, because that game rocks. But yeah, with VIVIDLOPE, you're kind of like running, and you can pick up a bunch of different power-ups. Kind of one of the main ones is like a hammer that you can then smash enemies, and you're just basically, avoiding enemies, running around, trying to cover as much of the ground as you can. And then once you hit like a certain percentage, like it'll tell you how many tiles, then you hit like the bonus round, and you can keep covering as many tiles. But if you step on any of the tiles that you've already covered, you start like draining your power meter. And then once that drains, it kind of ends the stage, but you can go for like the best rank that you can possibly get. And I just really like the structure of the game too. Like the first, world, if you will, I know they call it a stage or a level or whatever, has like 15, I think, stages in it, but then you only have to beat 8 of those to move to the next world. And there's kind of an overworld. There's even like a little bit of like a minor story situation going on. It's got a really cool, like 2D but 3D art style. Like it's definitely 3D, but it's like everything's made out of like 2D assets, kind of. Like it reminds me a little bit of Lil Gator game, in like the way the character designs are, at least. Or even like Rayman a little bit, because it's just like a bunch of like disembodied limbs and whatnot. But it's just such a cool game. The style's off the charts. I'm really looking forward to playing more of this one. And I have a feeling, I'm just kind of grazing on all these. I have a feeling we might at least talk about those 2 Vertex Pop games in the future, because I shared them with Randall and John in the Discord, just letting them know I picked them up for cheap. And they were just like, oh, I'm picking both these up immediately. Or at least I know Randall said that. I know John at least mentioned that they thought they looked pretty cool. And then VIVIDLOPE definitely seems like they're up kind of both of their alleys as well. So we'll see if we end up and Goliath Depot as well. So especially for Randall on that one with the retro arcade. But yeah, I've done enough little kind of light rambling here, but I'm going to kick it over to John, Randall, and I for a little kind of board game heavy talk here, but a little video game stuff as well. But yeah, until next week, we will catch you then, and take care.
I've been like finally going through and like putting so many of like this the games that you just mention on every Save It for the Cast. I'm like, oh yeah, I should actually check that out, instead of just like listening to it and being like, oh, that's cool, and then moving on.
Yep. Immediately forgetting.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'd say like probably 50-50. Like some of the games, I'm like, why did I even talk about that on the podcast? And then I'm like, it just like worked with like, this is what I just happened to be squeezing in playing.
Yeah.
In that time, like I used to be like more worried about like, I want to make sure it's like something. And then I was like, you know what? We've done enough episodes at this point. Like if we repeat a game, who cares? I'd rather like, I kind of think it's fun when we like revisit stuff.
And like the wider net that you cast, like, I don't know, maybe you're given a little bit more sunlight on something that, otherwise wouldn't. Because you put like, I think it was Anarcute that you talked about. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that does sound like a game I would want and play. And it's like,
it's got some John energy for sure. Like it's got, I don't know why, but it just definitely seems like something you would play.
And like, I'm pulling it up now. I think it's like, it's $2 now on Steam right now.
Yeah.
So,
jeez.
Yeah. Man, I do want to real quickly too, just because I talked about it with John last time. Randall, if you're ever in the market for a board game, that Fire Tower game that I played on that trip with my friends.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's the best board game I've ever played. And it's especially in the sense that it's like got some cool rules to it, but it was like so easy to learn. Like we didn't have to like sit there. What does this card mean? Right. What does this rule do? What happens? There was like maybe one thing that we were like, oh, can you do this? And we kind of like just either found it online. We weren't sure if it was like an official rule, but we read it and we were like, that makes sense. So like, let's just interpret it that way and go from there.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool. It's so simple. You just basically have this board, 4 like fire towers, 1 in each corner. You can play up to 4 players, or you can just play 2 up. You have to have at least 2.
Okay.
But basically each player has like their tower that they're trying to like protect, and the wind is blowing in a direction on each turn, and it like can only change when you play like a certain card. And then basically every turn, each player has to place a new fire tile, like building off the fire that's already there.
Yeah.
On like, it's just like a top down grid kind of view, and you have to just place it in the direction of the wind connected to fire that's already there. And then you're just trying to get to the very corner tile of the other person's fire tower to like burn it down. But like every turn, you have to place a fire like token or whatever, and then play a card that can sometimes like make more fire on the board, or put out fire, or like build a wall that blocks, like makes it incapable to have fire on that tile. It was just such a simple but like elegantly designed game, and like all like the little fire tokens, like each one, I don't think they're literally all different, but there's probably like 5 or 6, 7 different shapes, so they all like kind of, and they have this like see-through orange like plastic.
Nice.
Just the way they catch the light is
nice.
Just, I don't know, it was like a beautiful game to play. As soon as he pulled it out, I was like, whoa. I was like, Nathan, what is this game? I was like, we gotta play, what is this? We gotta play this. And like, everybody got, as soon as like we played around, like the other people that weren't playing were like, hey, we got next game. Like,
nice.
It was like clearly, and then there's an expansion, so I'm like, I'm buying this game without a doubt.
Yeah, I like as soon as you were talking about it, I'd like send it to my family who's a bunch of board game nerds, and I was like, "Yep, this one needs to be bought by all of us."
And it was so good. Like I loved how, especially because it's like it's 4 players, but because it's kind of split into quadrants essentially. I mean, it's just one giant grid, but like the way the wind blows, all of a sudden, like the fire starts getting heavy on like one side of the board, let's say. So everyone, or like 2 players kind of maybe start teaming up on the other 2 because they're like, oh man, we're cornering those guys. Like, let's just keep cornering them. And then they get kind of pit, they're like, oh, well, screw you guys. And they start laying it on you when they get an opportunity to. And then like just how quick the tables can turn where you're kind of like partnering up with someone to take someone else out. And then right away you get a chance and you're like, you know what? Fuck you, man. I'm burning you down. I don't know. It was just awesome.
Allyship is over. Yeah. No, that sounds sweet.
Awesome game.
Yeah, and it looks like 15 to 30 minutes per
yeah, it was
session.
A pretty quick game. Quick game. Yeah, I'd say we finished in about 30 for sure. And we were like kind of learning as we went, so definitely if you knew what you were doing, you could play quicker. And then there's an expansion pack that like adds some new rules and stuff that you can buy. We didn't play that version, but
no, we're definitely warming up to that. We've been playing a little bit more Magic the Gathering again, and kind of leaving a folding table set up for just kind of getting into more of that sort of stuff. So yeah, eventually we're gonna get a legit, like the Midwestern folks we ultimately are, need to get a card table and some folding chairs to stick somewhere.
Hell yeah.
Gotta have somewhere to play euchre, baby.
Yeah, it's part of the heritage.
Gin rummy, if you're.
Rummy is awesome. I had never played that until when I worked at DMK, and they used to like play it like while they were waiting for like food to get brought up. They would just like throw cards down and like keep tally. And I was like, "What are you guys doing?" So just playing rummy. I was like, it was like addicting. Something about it. Very addicting game.
I remember my grandma played rummy.
Nice.
I don't think I ever did.
It's like a game that you can't really like be good at, right? It's just like it's like literally just luck of the draw.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But you get to put it in
war. Yeah.
You get a nice little plastic circle. It looks like almost like a snowflake where it's got like a gin rummy at least. I don't know if
I don't know if I've seen
variants of rummy there are. But God, is that also what Rummy Cube is based off? Where like
I don't know.
Rummy Cube is like a more of like a domino variant game, but it's spelled with a K. It's RUMMIKUB. Okay. It's a weird game. I don't remember.
I like all those like old school games that like dominoes, like those like kind of like traditional tabletop games. Like those are kind of cool.
God, when did Rummy Cube come out? Like this is just gonna. That sounds. It's like I feel like a lot of the games that I played were invented in the 70s.
Sure.
Just like from when my parents were playing a lot of board games.
Mm-hmm.
Rummy Cube.
At least in the 1970s, it was brought to the United States.
Yep, it's a mixture between Rummy and Mahjong. That rips.
Okay.
It does rip.
Nice.
Tiles, kind of like Scrabble, just a little bit more rectangle-y.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Yeah, something about that. What was that? It kind of reminds me of those like kind of games that were on that. What was that DS game? Like Club?
Clubhouse games.
Clubhouse games. Yeah, it's like those kind of games,
Yeah.
It's like kind of like casino games, but like that aren't gambling. It reminds me of like you'd play them on like a green felt table kind of vibe.
100%. Oh man.
Yeah.
That rules.
Plus, I just love like the texture. I just love like that tactileness of that kind of stuff. Like when you get like some nice dominoes and they have like that little like.
Gotta be etched.
I don't think they make them. And I don't think they make them out of ivory or anything. But like that little like clank that they make, the like sound when they tap together, like or like a bag of them, or like even like nice like Scrabble pieces. I just love that.
Yakuza because Yakuza is basically a beat 'em up with a million mini games in it. It's
has beat 'em up with a WarioWare.
It has so many games in it. It has Mahjong. It has Shogi, which is I thought just like I was like, oh, it's like chess with a couple extra pieces, and then I'm like, no, there's so many rules that I don't know. I played like the baby version of Shogi in Yakuza, and I just got like completely swept. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on in this, so I'm gonna like learn how to play Shogi. Like there's so
what a
many.
sweet way to be like introduced to the concepts of those games, though.
Yeah.
There are people who like only play Mahjong in that game. They're like, oh yeah, Yakuza, the Mahjong game.
Yeah.
We'll play Mahjong within this like AAA game. Just like,
Hey, that's how people
games.
got with poker with Red Dead, I feel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or
Playing poker.
Gwent in
Yeah.
friggin' The Witcher.
Yeah.
Still have not played.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
I
Kind of forgot about that. I forgot about that like card game in King Knight, that treasure trove, Shovel Knight. Remember, there was like that whole extra like card game. I just like kind of skipped over those elements of the game, but
Yeah.
it was like a full blown like extra element of the game.
Yeah, they got that in Final Fantasy IX as well. I never got good at that one. God, I love a small game within a game.
It's the best.
It is cool. It is cool.
That was the first. That might have been one of the first. That's not true. I probably played it on NES, maybe. But I think like one of the first times I actually played like the original Donkey Kong arcade was through Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was actually on there.
Yeah, there's like a legit arcade machine that you can go up to. I think you might have to like unlock it, get enough whatevers. But
I'm trying to think if there is something other than Metroid that was also the same for me. Probably there must have been like, oh yeah, like so many different Mario games had like the original Mario Bros.
sure,
Yeah.
Like,
Animal
arcade.
Crossing had all those like NES games and stuff too.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a demo. There's a demo.
For
Ultra Kill.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's early access still, which I think is interesting because I think it came out
weird.
4 years ago.
Yeah. That is weird.
Wow.
It's been out for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. I wonder if it's one of those games. There are some games that just like never leave early access. You know, they just kind of like, this works enough. We made enough money. They just like kind of like linger and like never finish the game.
Let me pull up what it says on the Steam page because I think they have like an explanation for why it's in early access.
Yeah.
And it's like something about like they just want to continue to work it. Let's see. Why early access? Because we want Ultra Kill to be the best game it can possibly be. The feedback we've gotten from the community has always been a big part of what has shaped the game into what it is, and in order to continue that, we want the players to get their hands on the game as soon as possible to make sure it is steered in the correct direction. And then, yeah. Oh, the game will stay in early access until the third and final act is complete. Interesting.
I suppose that makes sense.
Okay.